Vishnupada Paramahamsa Prabhupada Śrīmad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Śrīmad Bhāgavatam Morning Ki Jai Gaura Pramanandi Hari Hari Bo Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 21, Text number 39. Yat sevaya shishya guhasaya sarad viprapriyastushiti kaman ishvaraha tad eva tad dharma parai vinitai Sadvatmana Brahmakulam Nishevyatam Yat Sevaya Shesha Guhashaya Swarad Viprapriyastushiti Kaman Ishvara Tad Eva Tad Dharma Parai Vinitai Sadvatmana Brahmakulam Nishevyatam
Yatsevaya Shesha Gunashaya Swarat Viprapriya Sushati Kamam Ishvaraha Tadeva Tadharma Parayvinitai Sarvatmana Brahma Kulam Nishevyatam
Yat, whose sevaya, by serving, asesha, unlimited, guha ashaya, dwelling within the heart of everyone, svarat, but still fully independent, viprapriya, very dear to the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, tushyati, becomes satisfied, kamam, of desires, Ishvaraha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, tat, that, eva, certainly, tattama parai, by following in the footsteps of the Lord, vinitai, by humbleness, sarva atmana, in all respects, Brahmakulam, the descendants of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, Nisevyatam, always being engaged in their service. Translation: the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because this is Prithu Maharaj speaking, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is everlastingly independent and who exists in everyone's heart, is very pleased with those who follow in his footsteps and engage without reservation in the service of the descendants of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. For he is always dear to Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and they are always dear to him. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It is said that the Lord is most pleased when he sees one engage in the service of his devotee. He does not need any service from anyone because he is complete, but it is in our own interest to offer all kinds of services to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These services can be offered to the Supreme Person not directly, but through the service of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Srila Narottam Das Thakur sings, Chadiya Vaishnava Seva Nishtara Payati Keva, which means that unless one serves the Vaishnavas and Brahmanas, one cannot get liberation from the material clutches. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also says, Yasha Prasarad Bhagavat Prasada. By satisfying the senses of the spiritual master, one can satisfy the senses of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, this behaviour is not only mentioned in the scriptures, but also followed by acharyas. Prithu Maharaj advised his citizens to follow the exemplary behaviour of the Lord himself, and thus engage in the service of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. So, Prithu Maharaj is the ideal king, the ideal leader, and he is speaking to his citizens. And he is asking them that if they want to please the Lord, they should engage in the service of the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas. And in the previous verse, he has explained that the personality of Godhead, because this is such an important principle, he has, in fact, when he appears in this world, he personally engages in that activity as well. So when Krishna appears in this world, Krishna appears and he shows everyone in this world how to live in this world properly without committing sinful activity or activity which causes harm and suffering to other living entities, to live in this world in which one benefits oneself and all others, and to live in this world and to develop the love of God as we live like proper ladies and gentlemen in this world. We also develop our love for God. So when Krishna appears, or his different incarnations, such as Lord Ramchandra, they show us how to do these things, just like a teacher, writes ABC on the board, and then all the students follow ABC like that. So they do it themselves, and then But he also shows, because he's independent, because he's God, he also shows us that he's doing these duties, but don't think that he's an ordinary human being like us. So every now and then he'll do something to show that he is the teacher, the supreme teacher, the personality of Godhead himself. And so, Krishna lifted the Govardhan hill, lifted a big mountain. So, of course, we should not think, oh, yes, one day I'll also learn how to lift up a mountain like this and hold it there for 7 days. That's not going to happen. So Krishna and Lord Ramchandra, he showed, how to be the perfect son, the perfect king, the perfect husband, brother, citizen. But, we cannot imitate his behavior where he made huge boulders, the size like the peaks of mountains, float in the ocean to form a bridge. So he is the personality of Godhead, but when he appears in this world, he shows all the activities that one should perform in all the different circumstances that we find ourselves in this world, how to do that properly, how to make the right choices. And amongst the activities central to this is that if we follow the Brahminical culture and the Vaishnava culture, then all the teachings of the Lord are encompassed within that. So everything that the Lord demonstrated, wanted to teach us, is there within the Brahminical culture. That's how one should live in this world. And that Brahminical culture, in that system, Krishna is saying that it doesn't matter what your particular propensity is, whether you're a man, a woman, young or old, a worker, a producer, a capitalist, a ruler, a warrior. If you follow those who have studied the instructions and scriptures left behind by the personality of Godhead, if you follow those personalities who understand all the instructions of the Lord, then even if one doesn't understand oneself, what all those instructions are, if one is within that society, then one will do the right thing. So just like, on a day-to-day basis, of course, all of us exist within a family. And of course the family unit means that generally, the wisest and most, pure-hearted, they're guiding the family. Sometimes it's the parents, sometimes it's the grandparents. Whoever's in the best situation to give the best instructions. Sometimes it's a father, sometimes it's a mother. Depends who's the best in the best position to guide. And sometimes it's a combination of several of them. But everyone within that family, they may not understand everything, but because they're just following along with the family, they're all going in the right direction. You know, really on a day-to-day basis, they don't really have to understand the future. You know, the children and so many others understand, yes, we're going in the right direction. A kingdom or a country is like a big family. Actually, the king, like Pritha Maharaj, will treat the citizens like children. Just one big family. The whole nation is just one big family. And, of course, you know, in the Vedic times, there's no concept of nationality. In Vedic times, you know, nationality is something that creates wars. You know, this is mine, it's not yours. Immediately you've got a problem as soon as you make that statement. And that's also mine and not yours. So, and I'll take that as well. You know, this nationality, it's like that. It creates problems. People think, you know, the more national you are, the more peace you're going to have. Oh, we protect the nationality, we'll get peace. But actually creating this sense of nationality actually creates wars. But actually in a God-centered society, there's no borders like that. That everyone is under the same umbrella of the personality of Godhead, and all the resources of the world are meant to be shared equally for each person that they get their allotment like that. So this Brahminical culture, and with the Brahminical culture, we learn the best standards of morality and good qualities following a sattvic way of life. So in this world there's three ways you can do anything. Whether you're working, whether you're eating, whether you're, you know, recreation, anything you do in this world, raising a family, you know, anything you do, there's three ways you can do it. You can do it a good way. You really know what you're doing. Or you can be in ignorance and do it the wrong way. Or you can do a bit of a mixture of both. Like that. So the right way, full of knowledge, that's sattva. It's called sattva. The wrong way, in ignorance, that's called tamas, ignorance. And rajas is a little mixture, passion in between. So the Brahminical way means let's do things the right way with full knowledge, how things work. So that's a Brahminical way. And so this Brahminical way, that teaches us how to live materially in this world with proper knowledge. But the Brahmanas who are practicing that way of life, and therefore qualified to teach that, they're a higher level where one also knows the spiritual way to exist in this world, and that is to develop one's love of God. And those Brahmanas are called Vaishnavas. Although Vaishnava doesn't necessarily have to be from the Brahmana community. If one is a Vaishnava, actually they automatically have all the Brahminical qualities, even if they're from a different section of society. So the Brahmanas, they're teaching this sattvic way of life. They study the books of knowledge called Shastras. Every culture has books of knowledge. So we have our books of knowledge the law department deals with for keeping law and order and standards of morality. There's books of knowledge in medical, how to keep good health, both physically and mentally. There's books of knowledge for also proper social etiquettes, what is proper for women and men to behave within their homes and within public, and dealing with each other and children and other people. So all these different books of knowledge over time are there, and amongst them the Vedas have been studied by people from all over the world. Actually, in Germany for decades they've enjoyed studying the Vedas, because they understand that there is great knowledge there. Actually, they during the times of the war, Adolf Hitler, he tried to ransack the Vedas for knowledge to build better aeroplanes, and of course the swastika, that comes from the Vedic. That's a Vedic symbol, which means eternity. I think he had it backwards, which is the opposite of eternity, which tends to mean, the opposite of eternity is death. So he certainly produced a lot of that. And also, different medical researchers will have, but people from all cultures for thousands of years have understood that there is a body of knowledge. Actually, our mathematics, the zero, quite often different cultures have been given credit for mathematical, progress, but actually what happens is all that mathematical knowledge is in the Vedas, and then somehow it goes to the Middle East, and then the Europeans go to the Middle East and they take it back to Europe. So they may give some credit to the Middle East, but quite often they just take the credit in Europe, but none of it ever goes to India, very rarely. So because that's the jealousy, that's the nationalism kicking in again. That our national interests, it's best that we don't allow people to understand there may be something better over there than what we've got here. So that's how nationalism works. So, but the Vedas are recognised throughout time as a body of works where all knowledge, you can find the knowledge from all cultures in the Vedas, but more. And so the Brahmanas follow this Vedic knowledge and they teach that to society. And ultimately, if a Brahmana is really qualified, they will become a Vaishnava. Properly, someone who is has the topmost knowledge of the Vedas that one can have. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that one becomes a Brahmana not by birth. You can become a Brahmana by birth, just as, for instance, in Vedic culture, it was quite natural that if your parents were Brahmanas, you had, about 90% chance that you'd also become a Brahman as well, because you'd be trained like that from birth. And quite often the process of conceiving is that you're actually calling that type of soul into the womb. You're wanting a child, and the process brings forth that sort of soul to come into the womb who's Brahminical by nature. So, but if to be a Brahmana or a Brahmani, one has to develop the qualities and do the work. So Brahmanas have certain qualities. They develop control of the mind and the senses, which is extremely important for developing knowledge, because if we quite often, in this day and age, people get an education for this reason. They want some money, or they don't want to be a checkout chick. They don't want to be a labourer. They don't want to be working on the roads. So they want to be able to work a little, spend a lot. So they'll acquire knowledge for that purpose. Brahmanas, they acquire knowledge without motive. Just to benefit the world, So where is the knowledge that will benefit the world? Then, let me understand that knowledge. And that's because they have full control of the mind and the senses, and they're very pure-hearted. And so previously in Vedic culture, when Brahmanas would teach, there was no fee. Anyone could go, Now, of course, they have this international scandal, which stemmed from America, where they're being caught out that to get into the universities these days, almost you have to bribe someone. You know, there was one person who made a $2 million donation to, I think it was Harvard University or something, and then, strangely enough, their son was just accepted into that, school, that college somehow straight after that, although perhaps they didn't really have the qualifications. So it's very hard to get into. I think I think there's about something like a 15-20% of people who will apply will get there. So, you know, if 10,000 people apply, 2,000 will get in. So then it comes down to who's got the money to get in. But in Vedic times, anyone, if you could go to the teacher, and if you had an apple, the teacher would give you the same knowledge that someone would come and give a cow or, something like that. It made no difference like that. So they gave knowledge out of a sense of duty for the benefit of everyone. But, so one must, a Brahmana, they develop certain qualities, and those qualities are very conducive to learning and assimilating knowledge. Their whole way of life is like that. You see students these days, they go to university. On the first day, I did a computing business certificate when I was as a devotee, but I did 1 year full time. And on the first day, it was very interesting because they brought someone in from stress management. And they said that, because people's minds are, disturbed, even from day one, let alone their lifestyle as they go through college or university. And they're trying to stop them from committing suicide or, having breakdowns or leaving. So, the first question they ask is, hands up, everyone who would, they're here but they'd actually like to be doing something else rather than doing this course. Somehow or another that this is sort of what's a choice that they've made, that they actually really wanted to do something else. I think there was about 1 or 2 people actually wanted to do that. And then the whole, that whole session, the first session, was, about stress. Because those students just go through hell, because of their lifestyle, because of their studies, so many different things. Brahminical life is nothing like that, very peaceful, very, the study is a joyful, peaceful process, which they practice. But not just one's quality, but one's work. So one also has to do the work. So Prabhupada gives this example that if they choose a high court judge, they choose him from the lawyers. So, in other words, they want the best of those who know the law, who can practice it. You cannot just get a degree and become a high court judge. They do not bring someone from outside. Those who show the greatest talent through practicing what they have learned, they become high court judges. See? So similarly, therefore, the work one does is very, very important. So one must have the qualities and maintain those qualities as one does one's work, and that makes one qualified. So the work is very, very important. And amongst those, you get the Vaishnavas. The Vaishnavas are the highest level, that they can practice all the principles. One of the hardest ones, of course, is to utilize one's knowledge and one's life in sync or in relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and understand the existence of the Personality of Godhead within the heart of every living entity. To work in that way, always having faith that the Lord is within everyone's heart. So the Brahmanas, the Vaishnavas especially, they have great faith. There's a story Prabhupada told about one Brahmana, that the Brahmanas would go out and they would collect for their meal that day. So they don't have a job. They just understand that, somehow or another they will be maintained by the universe. So he went out collecting, and on this particular day, he couldn't get anything. He couldn't get anything to eat. And then one person said, yes, I can give you a little something, little soup. And so he said, oh, okay. So he brought him in and he gave him this little soup. And as he was eating, he realized that there was some meat in there. Oh, and he'd eaten it. He was so hungry, he'd eaten everything, and he understood there was some meat in there. And he said to him that, I'm so hungry because, I've been fasting for so long. Can I have some more? He said, well, I don't have any more. And then he said, oh, I've lost my qualifications as a Brahmana, and I'm still hungry. See? So, but a Vaishnava, they have a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore they have a higher understanding of how things work. And they understand that, okay, somehow or another, I'm fasting, I'm not getting anything today. That must be Krishna's will. I've tried my best, and I certainly, because of my love for God, I'll certainly not do anything to, disturb my love for God. So there's a strength. There's a strength there. There's a higher taste and a greater faith and a greater understanding of how things work. So they wouldn't do that. They would just say, okay, today I fast, and may the Lord, may that increase my love and increase the Lord's, affection for me, like that. So the Vaishnavas, they're a higher quality of Brahmana. Now, there's a verse here in Bhagavad Gita 7.1 because, which is very important. That is, so there are many different types of Brahmanas. Some become yogis, some become jnanis, they're scholars of the Vedas, but they don't necessarily understand God himself. But Krishna says that amongst all the Brahminical type of persons, the devotees are the best. He says, Yoginam api sarvesham madgaten antaratmana sarvan bhajate yo mam same yukta tamo mataha. And of all yogis, the one with great faith, who abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So above all the Brahmanas and yogis and transcendentalists, Krishna says that the devotee, the Vaishnava, is the best of all. So then, in the next chapter, the question is that because the devotee who has this great love for the personality of Godhead, Krishna, they're the best, how do we develop that love? So that we can't do just by studying the Vedas. Although the descriptions of the personality of Godhead and how to serve him, they are there within the confidential, revealed parts of the Vedas, but just by reading them is not understood. It's actually, they're from the Vedas, they're called revealed scriptures, which means that unlike academic knowledge, you can study it and perhaps understand it with your brain, your intellect. The revealed scriptures means that unless the Lord gives you the intelligence within your heart, you will never understand it. Right? So, you can test that. So you can explain the example that we're a spirit soul, and you can give the example that each of us have changed bodies in this life, from boyhood or girlhood to youth to old age. I'm at that point yet now. Not everyone's there. But we understand, we are actually transmigrating from one body to another, even in this life. The body has completely changed so many times, but we remain the same person. Therefore, we are different from the body. We're different from the bodies that have gone, and we're in a new body. And at the time of death, so an intelligent person can understand that. Even a child can understand that very quickly. But if you speak that example, to people, whoever you meet, you'll find that very few people can understand it, even if they hear it from you. Because, it has to be, these are revelations that come from within by the grace of the Lord. The spiritual understanding. What to speak of understanding the personality of Godhead. So, Krishna explains here how we develop that love for God. And he says, chapter 7, text number 1, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam Morning Maya Shakta Manapata Yogam Yunjan Marashraya Asamsayam Samagramam Yata Gyasasita Chuchanu. Says the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna said, now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. So, it is described again and again that when there is love and attachment for God, you can see him and understand him. Understanding God, is synonymous with also seeing God. So without love and attachment, actually, he will not reveal himself. It doesn't manifest within the heart, within one's vision. We cannot see him anywhere. So although God, for the Vaishnava, they see the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everyone's heart, in every atom, in every circumstances of life, on the altar in the temple, within the form of the scriptures. He's given his, his message is non-different from himself. But the non-Vaishnava, the non-devotee, they cannot see God anywhere at any time, under any circumstances. Although sometimes when death comes, they will yell out, God, please save me, at the end of their lives. So now, there's a term here, Krishna says, mad ashraya, means that you cannot directly attach yourself to Krishna. You attach yourself to Krishna through his devotee, through the Vaishnava. Or, as Prithu Maharaj is saying here, you actually have to come under the shelter of the Vaishnava. So for the Brahmanas, you can develop that knowledge how to live in this world in a proper way without incurring karma, but in a pious way, but to understand how to love the personality of Godhead and be attached to him, develop your love for God and go back to Godhead at the end of this life, you must come under the shelter of a Vaishnava. And for instance, Prabhupada gives this example that, our understanding of the sun is not because any of us have been here. Has anyone here been to the sun? Studied, walked around, had a good look, put it under a microscope, a big microscope? No. How do we know the sun? We know the sun because the sun's energy comes into our life. And we see the manifestations of the sun's energy. So, in the same way, the personality of Godhead through his energy, he allows us to understand him. If we cannot understand the energy of God, we cannot understand the Supreme Lord. If we cannot understand the energy of the sun, we cannot, because we have no access, direct access to the sun. We have no direct access to the personality of Godhead. But through his energy, and that energy, when he desires it, I will reveal myself to you, he does that, he appears through his energy, manifested in the form as the Vaishnava. And the best of the Vaishnavas is called the Guru. So coming under the shelter of the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas is what is recommended by Krishna and what is recommended here by Priti Maharaj. And then one can develop that spontaneous love for God. Now, spontaneous love for the personality of Godhead would be like this. As described by the great Acharyas, that, you know, when a young boy sees a young girl and somehow there's an attraction there, it's spontaneous. You know, they don't have to, you know, they don't have to get an education or some training for that spontaneous attraction to take place. You know, it's just, it's you know, it's spontaneous. It's causeless. You know, it's not that any you know, extraneous factor. It's not because of you know, there's no reason why one has automatically become spontaneously attracted to, you know, that opposite person. So that now spontaneous love for the personality of Godhead, as Krishna is explaining here, that a Shakti is like that. So then we have to ask that, do I have that? That when if I'm not hearing about Krishna, do I become restless? You know, oh, I can't sit still. There's no topics of Krishna. You see the devotees, you know, people start talking pajalpa, as we call it, or topics about, you know, the cricket or the football. It's not about Krishna. They become restless. I think I've got to go somewhere. You know, it's like they're having, they get the heebie-jeebies. But, you know, so therefore what happens is we follow regulative principles, as Krishna explains. By following the Gita, we follow different regulative principles, and that helps that attachment to develop. Because those regulative principles, what they do is, currently our attachment is for things in the material world. And the regulative principles say, okay, you know, our life is filled, what are the main attachments in this world? You go down the street, you pick 4, everyone's pretty much got them. Intoxication, try and find someone who's not on some intoxication. Even the old ladies, they've all got their, you know, their morphine and their, you know. No, seriously, the prescription drugs are the biggest killers. Do you know that? The prescription drugs are actually killing more people, and more people are addicted than anything else. The ones you just get in the chemist. Everyone's got their, you know, their intoxication. And illicit sex, you know. Of course, you know, for Vaishnavas, you know, as Prabhupada says, there is no illicit sex because they get married, they raise children, and they have sex life to raise children. So, you know, and they do that for to develop their love for God. But for others, it's literally just, you know, the sex life itself. Gambling and meat eating meat, you know, non-vegetarian foods. Now, these activities, so the regulative principles, what they do is they say, okay, you want to eat the meat, which is very sinful, and you cannot be a lover of God what's that saying? You cannot, love God while you've got meat in your beard. Is that you cannot be sinful and be a lover of God. Right? You try to love anyone in this world. Someone will say, "Oh, the thing I hate most is this," and you go and do that very thing and say, "Oh, I love you so much." You just can't love someone like that. So you can't be sinful. These are the 4 pillars of sin: intoxication, meat eating, gambling. This is eating meat, especially the cow, because in Brahminical culture, the cow is considered sacred. The cow is like a mother figure. Because, that's difficult for people to understand these days. A lot of people don't see the mother as sacred. People don't care about their mother. They want to rob their mother. Beat her, kick her out. So, people... But actually, you don't have to go too far back in time where actually everyone would, literally die for their mother. They look after their mother like that. But the cow, when everyone, they're raised on the cow's milk. The cow is there's 7 natural mothers, like the nurse and, the wife of the king and, the wife of the Brahmin and like that. And the cow amongst them. So it's very sinful, that the cow is acted like a mother, nourished us as children, and then we grow up and kill the cow. So it's very, very sinful. So actually, the personality of Godhead will not reveal himself to a sinful person. He will always remain... So therefore, there's this verse in the Gita, and this is the purpose of the regulative principle. The regulative principles means that draw our attachment away from these impious activities and let us regularly do pious activities. So instead of eating, food, even if it's vegetarian, but still, we're actually taking something that God has given us, like we pray, God give us our daily bread. But if we just take the daily bread without giving thanks to God, that's then, it's stealing. So there should be some thanks, some acknowledgement. And that is common in all scriptures. But in this verse here of the Bhagavad Gita, 7:28, Yesham tvantigitam papam jananam punyakamanam te dvandva moha niyamukta bhajanti mandridhabrita. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life. So there has to be a background in many lives, and especially this one, whose sinful actions are completely eradicated and free from the dualities of delusion. They engage themselves in my service with determination. So the regulative principles, under the guidance of the Brahmanas, and especially the Vaishnavas, because the Vaishnavas, they don't just curb sinful activity and give you pious activity. The Vaishnavas curb impious activity by giving you ecstatic love of God, activities, transcendental, blissful activities. The Brahmanas can't give that because they don't know that. But the Vaishnavas can. The Vaishnavas can actually... so instead of having, food, ordinary food, even, meat, one has prasadam. So eating prasadam is a very pious activity because that activity is an activity where things have been offered to the personality of Godhead. He has accepted that, sanctified that food, and then it is, because God is complete, he eats it all, and it all still remains. Because everything God does is complete. Nothing becomes deficient. Everything remains full. Even though he eats it all fully, and then it's fully still there for us to eat. Because God is complete. He can do that. Now, one may question, why do we need to feed God? Here he says he's independent. He doesn't need to be fed. in these chapters it describes you can also feed the Lord by, offering foods to the Vaishnavas and the Brahmanas. But God doesn't become hungry because people are not giving him something. He is full. But it's something like, if you've ever seen when you see little children, probably about 1.5, and the mother or the father been feeding them, and then one day the little child, about 1.5, grabs the spoon and starts feeding the parent. Has that one done that yet? Done, yeah? How old's that one? 1.5, right. There you go. Yes, I'm talking about you. So, now, what's the parent going to do? Oh, how dare you feed me? You think I'm, can't help myself, or, I don't need to be fed by you. The parent think, oh, this child is showing me love. I don't need the child to feed me the food that I've actually already bought and cooked. But I'll accept it because the child is learning to reciprocate love. And so when we offer foods to Krishna, it is like that. He's saying, oh, this child of mine, this little spirit soul, is offering me love like that. And he will accept that fully like that. So in this way, the regulative principles, they have that function of cutting out the impious activities and replacing them all with pious activities. Instead of talking about, we went to the restaurant last night, we had, got a great, gourmet meal of all this sinful food, and we talk about that for hours, and then we, swiggle down some wine and what have you, got intoxicated, went out gown, what have you, Instead of doing that, we're talking about activities related to Krishna consciousness, spiritual activities, for the benefit of everyone, very joyful. And hearing about how Balaram sometimes gets intoxicated by honey. And so we replace that, but not only do we replace the impious activities with pious activities, but those activities also engage us in a sixfold process of interacting with the Lord. Whenever we develop a loving relationship with anyone in this world, there are 6 activities we must do in order for there to be an affection or a loving transaction. We will share food. In other words, cook some food, offer some food, and the persons will accept that. And then they may also offer some foods. If someone doesn't eat someone's food, if someone doesn't eat Krishna's prasadam. I remember one time I was in Adelaide, Damodars, it was like a crossways, and a person come in for the first time. What is this? And I'm trying to get the person to have a little prasadam. So I thought I'll try some halva, usually a classic everyone likes. Took a little bit and just spat it out all over the table. I mean, where do you do that sort of thing? But, and that. So, there's you can tell, he's developing that relationship with Krishna, the devotees, it's really not quite there yet. A little bit of work to go. Anyway, but so sharing food, sharing gifts. Give a gift. Give in charity. So we give in charity to Krishna. Krishna, you have come to this, Melbourne. Let us offer you some nice gifts. You stay here. Don't ever leave. Your presence is gift enough for us. And, to come each morning, see the smiling face of Krishna Radharani, and the opportunity to serve the Lord, that is our gift. So we offer gifts to the Lord. And as we say, everything that we have, including our very existence, is a gift from God. And he gave us independence. He gave us the independence as a gift, which he will never take off us. Once God gives you a gift, you got it for good. You want to be sinful? Go ahead. You want to love me? Come on. and revealing one's mind in confident. We listen to Krishna. Oh, Krishna, you came personally, you spoke this Gita. Let me at least once in my life hear it as a show. This is obviously important to Krishna. This is the main thing he wanted to say. Let me listen once in my life to what Krishna, the main thing he wanted to say. And then we can offer our thoughts. Oh, Krishna, like this, we can offer our thoughts, our prayers. So the regulative principles engage us in these activities, and actually love develops. Okay? In India, Prabhupada explained that the marriages were a little like this. That Srila Prabhupada, of course, his wife was 11, I think, when he married. I think he was about 20-something. His father-in-law and mother-in-law were about 7 and 11 when they married, something like that, when they married. They used to do that. So, of course, in those days, what had happened is they would marry. The families knew each other. They knew the children. They would do a compatibility, an astrological chart, and they would see that, there's a good match here, And then what would happen is they would live separately with each other's families. Gradually, as the man grew up and he got some income and got a home and everything like that, then what would happen that the grandparents and the parents, they would say to the little girl, they would make some food. You say, you take this to your husband like this. Here's some nice food for his, he's just come home from that. And they would sit and they would talk, enjoy some food like that. So they're like regulative principles of giving and taking, talking. And gradually, over time, that allowed that intimacy to naturally develop. And then, of course, when they were both at a suitable age and mature in their relationship, that affection was there spontaneously and naturally, then they would live together and gradually raise a family. But in that way, there's a misconception in this day and age that when you'll meet someone and almost it will be love at first sight, but actually, love is in the spiritual world, we all love each other. But in this world, we all got a lot of bad habits. We've all got things that people may not love about us. So we sort of have to work on things like that. You won't find the perfect person in this world who doesn't have some bad qualities, or there has to be a bit of give and take. So what happens is that because of those bad qualities, bad habits, the couple need to gradually help each other to remove some of those, and then when those different things are obstacles for attachment and love are moved out of the way, love naturally develops. Love is natural because it's there within the soul. As I said, in the spiritual world, we all love each other. We don't have bad qualities and what have you. You just love everyone like that. But a very advanced Vaishnava, it doesn't matter, even if a person is filled with bad qualities and bad habits, just like Srila Prabhupada, his love was causeless. He had so much love, in his heart that he would travel to, even some of the most degraded parts of the world, and his love for people was automatic, spontaneous, and causeless. Because one who loves God, knowing that Krishna has spoken the Gita, and Krishna says, I love all these living entities in this world. I want them to come back home to love me again. And one who loves God, then let me take up that work. So Prabhupada was like that. Whatever Krishna wants, because I love Krishna so much, then I will do that. And whatever Krishna doesn't want, then I will definitely avoid that. So when that love for God is there, love for every living entity is automatically there. So, and that is another way that actually love develops between couples in this world. That actually in Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada, he understood that yes, you can get a compatibility. That's helpful. There's no doubt about it. But if the qualities of love of God develop nicely in the man and the woman, even if there's an incompatibility, as far as Srila Prabhupada was concerned, they will actually live happily together, just as they do in the spiritual world. So, so this is a little bit about why we follow the Brahminical and Vaishnava culture. You know, it's not an artificial system or a ritualistic thing, or you know, the Brahmanas have established this for their own profit. It's a way. It's a way that we're guided by the proper people to remove impious or sinful activities from our life and replace them with pious activities. And that is best done, especially in this age. In fact, in this age, unless one develops one's God consciousness, it is almost impossible to do in Kali Yuga, because sinful activities are so rampant and so entrenched in every aspect of society, practically it's like a flood that's just dragging people away. And unless one's heart is flooded with love of God, it's practically impossible to hold back the contaminating, degrading influence of this age. Therefore, the Sankirtan movement, and Krishna has appeared as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he is, because of his love, he said, it is impossible for you to go back to Godhead. But if you chant my holy name, then you can go back. Take prasad, chant the holy names. I have invested all my full potencies in the holy name, and that will be sufficient. That is the medicine, and the diet is the Krishna prasadam, and we take Krishna prasadam. Chanting Hare Krishna also means chanting not just the name, but chanting the glories of the fame and form and pastimes of the Lord. That is all chanting Hare Krishna. So I'll just leave it there if anyone has any questions or comments about that.
You said that there were different kinds of brahmanas, right? Not just Vaishnava brahmanas. There are also brahmanas who believe in the non-personal form of God.
So does that mean that there are two paths?
No, it was just one. So there was like all of these people, they have read Bhagavad Gita, and most of them believe in Bhagavad Gita as well. So how come even after reading that verse that says that, the bhakti yogas are the ones that are most dear to him, they still stay in that school of thought or that philosophy? Because if it's still there, it still exists with members, it must be working.
Yeah, the difficulty is this, that as Prithu is saying, you take shelter of a Vaishnava. So Vaishnavas read Gita, and a Vaishnava, they love Krishna. And they understand Krishna wanted to say this, so what Krishna wanted to say, I'll just repeat what Krishna wanted to say because I love Krishna. I'm not going to teach the Gita somehow to get some benefit for myself. I just want Krishna to be heard, that's all. Now, others do this. They have a particular motivation. They have a particular philosophy, that they would like to present. The next verse in this 7th chapter is the reason why we come into this world and why people don't like to think that there may be a God. It says, where is this? The next verse or the one after? Where's that? Maybe the one before. the one before, text 27, chapter 7. Ichidvesha samutena dvandva mohina bharata sarva bhutani samoham sageyanti param tapa. O son of Bharat, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by the dualities of desire and hate. We all come into this world because there's an envy that, why am I not like Krishna or God, the centre of everyone's love and attention and gifts? Why am I not that person? I would like to be that person. So that desire, is naturally coupled with some envy. And that brings us to this world where we can actually imitate. Yes, I am, we all behave like completely independent persons. Actually, God is independent. We're never independent. We have no independence, tiny little bit. We cannot say, I'll not grow old. There's no independence. We cannot say, I was born in India, maybe, I should have been born in Russia. That's not going to happen. You're born in India, that's it. It's been done. We had no control of it. I don't want to die. And if I do, okay, all right, I must die, but I want to take birth again. Now, all of these things, we have no independence. I don't want to get disease. I don't want to have financial problems. I don't want to work hard in this world. Like an ass. But, if you look at all the people of this world, you'll find that most of them are working hard. Actually, the animals don't even work that hard. They get this education. I've got so many qualifications. I'm so intelligent. I'm so qualified that for the rest of my life, I'll work harder than an animal. I'm so intelligent. We have no independence. God is independent. But we come to this world to be in that position. It's an illusory position. We're born into delusion. When we, again, to remove that desire and envy of God, we have to first acknowledge his existence. And that is the first step in love of God. The first step is we say, look, let me just listen to what Krishna says. That's the first step. Okay, we've conquered enough energy at least to hear the person out. Then, okay, maybe he is God, but I'm certainly not going to surrender. Well, what's he asking me to do? Always think of me, bow down, become my devotee, offer a little worship. Well, none of that seems too bad, really. It actually seems like a lot of fun. Okay, let me try it. But there are so many philosophies in this world, and unless they're the Bhagavad Gita, they're designed to remove God. Any other philosophy where God is not speaking himself, that I am the personality of Godhead, and that philosophy contradicts that, is a philosophy to remove God, as a person. So therefore, what happens is when they read the Gita, they read it and put that sort of interpretation onto it. Just like, Prabhupada would say, actually, he would, challenge in India, when he was in India, he said, it's not the Westerners are doing this. It's the people from India who are reading the Gita. They're going to the West and say, oh, Krishna means black, therefore you'll never know him. And yet, here, Preeti Maharaj is saying, if you want to know God, learn to love him. You can know him. And Krishna says the same thing. If there's bhakti, you can know me in full. If you develop your attachment to me by following the different process I give, you will know me in full. And they're saying, oh, I've read Gita. Krishna means black. Black is unknown. You can never know God. Or, yeah, it's funny. It is funny. It's silly, isn't it? They're very silly people. But, or Rukmi was a very silly person as well. You see what Krishna did to him. He cut half his moustache off, cut half his head off. So you want to act silly, look silly. So actually what happens, when we, have some silly philosophy, we do ridiculous things in this world, like think, yes, I am so qualified, I am so educated, you just watch me work like an animal, work harder than an animal, and eat worse than an animal, Bit of coffee, some black toast, you watch me really silly. So that's the problem. Krishna says, Dharma Kshetra Kurukshetra. This Bhagavad Gita was spoken, in Kurukshetra. It's an actual place. And they say, Kurukshetra represents the body. And Krishna is the soul, and Arjuna is the mind, something, crazy. But Prabhupada says, you find in a Sanskrit dictionary where Kurukshetra, which is known as Dharma Kshetra, where it says that Dharma Kshetra means the body. You find that in a Sanskrit dictionary, anywhere in the history you cannot find it. And yet that's how they're translating. And that's the problem. The problem is they're not actually hearing from a Vaishnava. They're hearing from someone who's removed Krishna, and they're hearing some nonsense, and therefore they accept that nonsense because they want to hear that nonsense because the love of God is not there. So, therefore Krishna says, if you want to learn love of God, you go to someone who loves God 24 hours a day. You go to someone like Srila Prabhupada. You see his love for God. Let Krishna be glorified all over the world. Oh, that's someone who loves God. Or you go to someone who says, Krishna means he's black. Oh, you can never know him. Forget it. Go read something else. If you want to know to love God, let's follow Prabhupada. Someone who loves God. You follow someone who's, doesn't love God, you'll never know anything. They cannot teach you the process, and they cannot demonstrate in their activities or their words. That is the problem. Here, the Shastra says you must take shelter of a Vaishnava, someone who loves God. If you want to be a mechanic, don't go to a dentist. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Jai.
से बड़ा हो गया।